Hi, friends from Minnesota and around the country. Thanks for joining us for another Child Protection League Action webinar. Tonight, we are going to cover a topic called social emotional learning. It's not a new buzzword. It's been around the education world for quite some time, but we feel it's an important topic for you to understand and know what social emotional learning is. So tonight, our presenter is Barb Anderson. Barb is one of the board members of the Child Protection League. She's a former teacher. She has decades of experience in research, analysis, and writing reports and doing commentary on curriculum and public school policy. We're so happy to have Barb as part of our organization. And we are thrilled to have her here tonight to talk to us about social emotional learning. So hang with us. It's an important topic, and we want you to fully understand what it is. This part of the presentation will be about a half hour long, and then we'll do some Q&A. If you're watching us live on YouTube, you can ask questions and make comments in the chat, and we'll bring them up and let's talk about it. Well, Barb, are you there and are you ready to get started?
Yes, you bet. Thank you, Michelle. The topic of our webinar today, as Michelle said, is social and emotional learning and how it will harm your child because your children are at risk. The purpose of this webinar is to awaken, inform, and mobilize parents to push back against this dangerous and latest educational craze that is moving at breakneck pace into our school districts all across Minnesota and around the nation. I will cover the 5 following areas. Oops, we got it. Okay, what is social emotional learning? The organizations that are creating and are funding CEL programs, CEL curricula and who promotes them, surveys, data and assessments, and alternatives to CEL and what you can do. Well, first of all, what is social and emotional learning? CEL is a process through which children's emotions, attitudes, and behaviors are retrained through emotional manipulation using subjective criteria. What could possibly go wrong? Well, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, known as CASEL, is the organization that developed CEL. It is a nationwide initiative for pre-K through 12 that transforms public schools from academic institutions into therapeutic institutions for diagnosing and treating perceived social emotional problems. You see, CEL is a form of therapy where educators are taught to practice psychology on innocent school children with unknowing parents. In the medical world, that would require legal consent from the patient or from the responsible adult. CEL, however, bypasses all of the typical protection laws. Parents are unaware that their children are being covertly screened for mental health issues by non-medical educators in non-medical contexts by using non-professional mental health assessments. Currently, the states that are participating in CEL are California, Illinois, Kansas, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Washington. But this keeps changing. An additional 11 states have applied, and Tennessee and Georgia, however, had originally applied, but they withdrew from CEL. In 2017, the Minnesota Safe and Supportive School Conference was held at the University of Minnesota St. Paul campus on January 25th of that year. It was sponsored by the Minnesota Department of Education and the School Safety Technical Assistance Center. CEL was the focus of this conference. The keynote speaker, Karen Van Osdal, shared that CASEL's Collaborating District Initiative, oops, we're having trouble with moving this ahead here. Okay, here it is. That CASEL's Collaborating District Initiative is at the forefront of national efforts to make CEL an integrated integral part of pre-K through 12 grade education. Cell instructors train the teachers to map students' cultural values. And that simply means what they are doing is they are identifying a student's personal cultural values and their preferences. This information then is collected in a data dashboard and measured to see whether an individual demonstrates change in regard to their attitudes, their feelings, and their behaviors. The results are entered into a national cell data bank. This is social engineering at taxpayer expense. CASEL breaks down cell into 5 core competencies. They are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. According to the CEL report, New Vision for Education, the goal is to introduce CEL early and to embed it into the core curriculum throughout a child's schooling. This document also admits, and I quote, stakeholders still lack consensus on the definition of CEL, end quote. In other words, here we have a 35-page paper promoting CEL when no one knows exactly what it is, and yet everyone is being told that they must do it. Few legislators understand what CEL is all about, even though it has been incorporated into Minnesota law through the 2014 Minnesota Safe and Supportive Schools Act, aka the bullying bill. It is crucial for our elected lawmakers to become aware of the dangers of CEL because social emotional learning is being prioritized and deeply embedded into education policy. Van Osdol stated that in order to experience positive change, a school district must be saturated with CEL. She said their goal is to develop and implement CEL standards and assessments in all grades, all subjects, by all teachers. According to another CEL report entitled Equity in Social and Emotional Learning, it is their hope that through transformative CEL education, they will be viewing children and youth as the next generation to reflect our interest in making explicit issues such as power, privilege, prejudice, discrimination, social justice, empowerment, and self-determination in the field of CEL, or for the development of justice-oriented global citizens. This is alarming. All of these topics will be woven throughout CEL curricula at all grade levels. That doesn't leave much room to teach reading, writing, and math, or talk about American history, patriotism, the US Constitution, or what it means to be an American citizen. The CEL New Vision for Education report states that global organizations such as the OECD, UNESCO, and the World Bank are well positioned to help to advance the international agenda. CEL indoctrinates students to support left-wing social justice causes with values that often differ from the values and viewpoints learned in the home. Children whose views regarding human sexuality and family that are based on religious teachings or traditional beliefs will experience emotional conflict in the classroom because their values will be targeted for change by CEL trainers and teachers. CEL is taking our educational system into dangerous waters by undermining the moral and character values of a large population of families. Non-judgmental awareness teaching violates a child's conscience and interferes with a child's ability to follow his sense of right and wrong. When a child seeks to do what is right, he grows in moral character and develops the self-control that is necessary for learning. Every child in America has the right to freedom of conscience, thought, and religion, and CEL will undermine those rights. Social emotional learning is being praised as the new science in education. Really? CEL research, however, is disconnected from science, it's disconnected from academics, and it definitely is disconnected from common sense. The focus is taken off of goals for academically achieving students, and it emphasizes their feelings and attitudes instead. Academic content takes a back seat to teaching affective and non-cognitive attitudes, values, and beliefs based on government-approved attitudes. This is a huge, significant paradigm shift for the U.S. educational system. This is a shift that will not prepare our students for college or future careers. The CEL New Vision of Education report actually admits to the following problems with CEL. Number one, there's going to be more screen time for children, replacing human interaction. Two, it's hard to measure CEL consistently. Three, difficulty holding educators accountable due to this lack of measurement. Four, there is already stretched funding. Five, insufficient time to teach academic skills. Isn't that why we send our kids to school? And last, six, confusing array of CEL definitions and terminology. These are 6 good reasons not to implement CEL into our public schools. The organizations that are creating and are funding CEL programs, there is quite a list of those. And the CEL initiative, first of all, as noted earlier, is led by CASEL. CASEL lobbies state legislatures and Congress to have states implement CEL into their education policy. The mammoth K-12 education establishment is partnering with corporate education cronies to mold the minds of your children through curricula and psychological assessments. Businesses are encouraged to partner with CEL so they can develop policies that link CEL to their business needs. They can make a profit on schools by ensuring that CEL will fit into their future workforce needs by having the children trained in these areas. Some of the CASEL and CEL funding partners, foundations, and charitable trusts include the federal government through the Institution of Education Sciences. This is a research arm of the U.S. Department of Education. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the 1440 Foundation. This organization promotes Buddhist yoga and mindfulness exercises. According to CASEL, their goal is to develop and pilot measures for collecting data on mindfulness practices, and your children will be the guinea pigs. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, they promote socialized medicine and climate change hysteria. The Novo Foundation, they are a leftist organization that promotes transgender rights. They are, quote, dedicated to catalyzing a transformation in global society, moving from a culture of domination to one of equality and partnership. Their goal is to help create a balanced world. That means taking down America. And lastly, state dollars. That means taxpayers. Yes, cost is a great concern. CEL implementation requires the hiring of a director, CEL specialists, and ongoing trainers for all teachers in each school district. Let's look at some of the CEL curricula examples and who promotes them. The Human Rights Campaign is a national LGBT advocacy organization for LGBT rights and all sexual and gender identities, and they are a major player in promoting CEL. Welcoming Schools, a project of HRC, was not developed at the request of parents and teachers, but at the urging of parents, families, and friends of lesbians and gays, PFLAG, of Greater Boston, who partnered with the Human Rights Campaign. HRC also partnered with the National Education Association to promote the Welcoming Schools curriculum. They did this as a way to create safe and supportive school climates all across the country. This curriculum is the centerpiece of CEL and the Safe and Supportive Schools Act that was signed into law in Minnesota in 2014. Welcoming Schools includes 6 hours of LGBT training for teachers, In many school districts, welcoming schools has actually replaced academic training in the professional development courses for teachers. Teachers are taught the beauty of homosexual love, how to view their students as gender neutral, how to teach these radical ideas to children, and how to introduce LGBT inclusive children's books. These lessons clash with constitutionally protected First Amendment free speech and religious liberties. Then there's a maze for elementary children. This is a cell-based curriculum that embeds anti-bias theory and social emotional learning. Anti-bias education requires students and their teachers to check their preconceived notions, their biases at the schoolhouse door, and to affirm all expressions of identity. Amaze instructors use kids' books for young children that cover different family structures, including gay and lesbian family members, religion, and gender expression and identity. Life-size dolls are used in the classroom with the children to manipulate their emotions. And then there's mindfulness education. We just lost that here. Get it back in a minute. Okay, here we go. Mindfulness meditation. Here's an exercise used in a classroom. These exercises are derived from a Buddhist religious practice, and they are used in the classroom under the guise of making students more tolerant and less judgmental. They do this by emptying a child's mind of all the thoughts. Children sit on the floor with their legs crossed and their eyes closed. The negative side effects can include bringing the mind into an altered state of consciousness. Students can also encounter a sensation of being disconnected from one's body or from reality. These are real potential dangers from Buddhist mindfulness meditation. Cell curricula lessons also include teaching students fluidity of sexual identity, anti-Christian indoctrination, praise of Islam, and view America as a racist nation. Surveys, data, assessments. Students will be tested on a regular basis to look for improvement in retraining their emotions and values. Children that don't have the right social emotional skills will be remediated by CEL through use of the computer with adaptive curriculum assessments. These will be embedded in the curriculum. Their social and emotional skills are then tracked and adjusted as needed until a child's beliefs line up with the preconceived viewpoints the promoters seek to advance. UNESCO has agreed to partner with Microsoft to jointly develop programs and solutions that use technology. Some trainers may choose to use wearable devices for students, such as smartwatches, wristbands, headsets, or apps to regulate and track a student's response. They do this by noting a fluctuation in stress and emotion. Teachers complain that lengthy assessments to retrain students shorten the academic day and take valuable time away from the academic lesson planning. No surprise here. Educators know that even though they are required to fill out confidential surveys of their cell activities, the principals can read the responses. This often leads some teachers to making false or exaggerated claims to give the appearance of success. A psychologist admits that the measurements are fakeable, imprecise, and they have 1,000 biases. All of these mental assessments are a bureaucratic nightmare that will bog down the entire public school system with increased paperwork and increased administrative costs. The paperwork will not be protected by the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, known as the HIPAA laws, since the assessments are being administrated by teachers. The school district can share the assessments of your child's mental health with anyone. Parents are not asked for permission before the children are screened, nor do they have any say over where the child's records will end up. Another danger of cell is that untrained people will assign labels to your children that will be preserved forever in a government data system. All of that data will become a permanent part of your child's academic record. This collection of data is a violation of privacy and interferes with the fundamental private rights of conscience to which every American is entitled. Doctors are warning about the extremely sensitive nature of evaluating a child's social emotional makeup and having inadequately trained teachers and staff implementing techniques designed to alter children's psyches. Schools are institutions of learning, not mental health facilities. Cell assessments are nothing more than psychological evaluations and should not be conducted under the guise of improving educational outcomes for pre-K through 12 students. Well, what are some alternatives to cell and what can you do? One slide behind, here's the next one. What you can do. Number one, refuse to let your children take state standardized tests. 2, refuse any social emotional screening tool like Devereux Student Strengths Assessment, DESSA. Tell your school board to reject cell. Notify your state representatives and senators to stop cell. Contact the Minnesota Department of Education and Commissioner and tell them that you do not want your children psychologically tested, profiled, and tracked. And tell them to focus on academic achievement testing only. And then get out now. Protect your child. Because if your child's public school is becoming saturated with cell, that is your only choice to get out. Parents lost the battle of control over the public school curriculum a long time ago. Protect your child and seek other options for education. Cell is not a federal mandate, even though the federal Every Student Succeeds Act contains provisions to support social emotional learning. CASEL claims that their advocacy efforts have helped embed cell into public policies. School districts can reject cell, and they can implement approved character education in elementary schools using the Golden Rule. This will save time for academics. Recess time, stretching exercises, and even a moment of silence to help children focus are much better alternatives for students than the mindfulness exercises in cell. Parents, you must proactively stave off the introduction of social and emotional learning initiatives in your school district because they will put your child's future at risk. Cell is an irresponsible social experiment that weakens academics, harms kids emotionally, and tracks them for life. This video is intended to be a useful tool for all interested parties to use to share with state and federal lawmakers, congressional and state legislative staff, education policymakers, school board members, teachers, and parents and taxpayers who will also share this information with others. The question is, who should be instilling values, attitudes, and beliefs in children and monitoring their emotions? The answer is parents, with the assistance of churches perhaps, but certainly not the government through the public schools. In the story of the Pied Piper of Hamelin, the piper played a magical melody that lured children away from their parents, leading them through a door in a mountain that closed forever behind them. Parents must not allow their children to be led away by the luring call of cell trainers. Cell closes the door to individual thinking, common sense, family values, and turns students into the next generation of leftist activists. Aristotle said, "All who have meditated on the art of governing mankind are convinced that the fate of empires depends on the education of youth. The fate of America depends on whether we win this education battle for the minds of our youth. Thank you.
Can you hear me, Barb?
I can hear you.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So I wrote down a couple of things that I had questions on. You had mentioned the data collection, and in a previous webinar when we spoke with Linda Bell about some of the early childhood bills, excuse me, that are in the Minnesota legislature, she made the comment that in a child's elementary school life or in their school life, the state will collect up to like 1,000 data points. And I had mentioned to her, gosh, you know, I'm having trouble like thinking of how many different things that they could collect data on. And now, you know, listening to you talk, I just, you know, could you review this again? So under CEL, they're collecting data on our children's attitudes, values, beliefs, and feelings.
Yes,
Is that right?
Correct. Yes. And they will be doing that. All of this will be embedded in the curriculum on all the different topics that they were talking about. That, you know, maybe they'll cover white privilege or empowerment and a lot of Marxist ideas. How do you feel about America with all this wealth? It's almost kind of a pitching socialism to these kids because they think they view wealth as just a fixed pie rather than that America can create wealth. And so they can shape their attitudes and values by how they present the lesson in the classroom. And then they're tested on this. And then if they don't have the right attitude or values, then they can, you know, do some more teaching and retest them. And their scores will then go into this data dashboard where they will track the kids and see if they have the correct attitudes and values.
You know, I was thinking to myself when you were talking, for us as adults, we kind of know with modern technology the potential to have our data collected and tracked, and you know, I think it's worthy of a lot of scrutiny, and maybe there needs to be measures to address it and such. But we're adults, right? And so when we engage in the digital world, you know, we bring a certain level of responsibility and the ability to assess, you know, what the consequences of, you know, do you want to download this, or, you know, do you trust that website, or, you know, are you going to share this information knowing that the internet is forever? And, but when you think about a child, can you imagine the potential trauma of a child who finally comes of age, right? Finally gets to the age of reason, whether that's around 7, you know, maybe by the age of 10 or 12, and realizes that everything in their life in school has been tracked and monitored and collected, and the data collected. I mean, could there be a violation there that could potentially harm the mental health of a child to you know, realize, hey, you know, you've been tracked your whole life?
Oh, I think this is definitely going to backfire. And, you know, it's interesting because there was a time when we could put our children on the school bus, send them off to school, knowing that the teachers there would uphold what the values that were taught in the home. And we've taught our children to trust and respect the teacher. And oftentimes you'll hear a child say, well, my teacher says, and they, you know, are an authority in the classroom. So then if they're shaping those values of that child, and then the child finds out later that this has gone into a data bank somewhere and the government has all of their values and attitudes in there. I mean, this is really a betrayal of what's happening to our children and to the parents who are also trusting the school system. And I think the children one day will look back and see, wait a minute, what happened to my privacy? You know, this is a violation of that and a violation of my conscience and my liberties. But in the meantime, we can destroy a lot of lives and program these children in the wrong direction by what is being taught.
Yeah, I was trying to check the chat here and see if there's a question.
You know, for a long time, I just believed that the public schools would turn around and that we could, you know, get a hold on what is going on in the public schools and make things better. But I'm at the point now where if the cell moves into your school system and it is embedded in every course subject, that then it is time that parents are going to have to pull their children out, because they won't be able to get a handle on anything in any subject. It'll be just like Jello trying to figure out what is taught where. And you know, because they will embed, take for example sex education, they'll weave it through all the different curricula in the school, and you won't be able to pull them out, opt out of one thing, because it will just be like woven through everything. And this is what we're finding, even like with this Amaze program for children, with the puppets, how they use those to manipulate children's thinking. And I've watched them do that. You know, you make a puppet talk to a child, and they start thinking of that puppet as a real person, and they can so easily manipulate what a child thinks, or their attitude towards gay marriage or transgenderism, and bring a child's thinking along those lines, convincing them that this is right and an alternative.
Yeah. I had looked up the definition of brainwashing. And one of the first definition that I saw was to affect a radical change in the ideas and beliefs of a person. And then it went on to say, you know, especially through, you know, hurtful things like isolation and abuse and stuff like that. We hear in public a lot, people talking about the negative effects of screen time on children, and what has happened culturally in the digital age with people becoming actually a little less social than being more social and more isolated. And then you look at you know, some of the groupthink mentality out there, and the propaganda that is used, and the different buzzwords that are used. You know, political correctness is a perfect example of it. You know, that makes people feel like they must self-police. You know, they must, that makes people afraid to speak up. All of this creates greater isolation. And that's challenging enough as a parent. Anybody who you know knows that pressure of not wanting to speak up and share their opinion because they're afraid of, you know, the attacks from other people. That's as an adult. You know, as a child, it doesn't need to be so coercive to be brainwashing. Like you said, you know, the ability to manipulate the mind of a child is much easier than as an adult. And as parents, you know, we have to be so vigilant about what is happening in the school systems. And I know there's a lot of great teachers out there. You know, we all know teachers that work in both public and private schools, and we know how hard they're working, and we understand the bureaucracy and the system under which they are trying to be a good teacher. And I think that is the biggest part of the problem, is that they're in so many cases stuck in a system that is hindering their ability to be the great teachers that they want to be. Can you, Barb, go back and just link to the bullying bill? You know, I remember the terminology cell, social emotional learning, was stated in the bullying bill, but I'd like it if you could just review again the context that it was used in the Safe and Supportive Schools Act.
Well, I think, like you said, the language is so important, and the left is just a master at manipulating language and using it to their advantage. And they have, you know, by using the term social emotional learning and then having their curriculum in place to bring it in. Hey, here we have this program, which is welcoming schools. And that definitely, I would use the term that you use, Michelle, indoctrination. And they are bringing that into the schools and just totally transforming the thinking of kids with all of these LGBT affirmations. And this sets up conflict in the minds of kids because they're taught one thing at home and then the school is teaching them something else. And I have seen this with a lot of children who then come back home and confront their parents and say, you know, you're not right. This is what's, you know, being taught in the schools. And then who do they believe? The parent or the teacher or the teacher? And what we need, as far as what you spoke to earlier, the good teachers in the schools, which we have many good teachers, and we need to have them stand up to SEL and to this fake bullying bill that really isn't about bullying. It's about bringing in all of these programs to affirm all of the sexual diversities and identities. And in fact, a lot of these trainers that are bringing these programs in have become the biggest bullies on the block because people are afraid to stand up to them. They're afraid to say, no, this is wrong, and this, we don't want this taught in our schools. And so if we can just somehow get teachers to be more outspoken and school board members to stop this kind of thing from coming into the schools. And if they, I know a couple years ago, school districts rarely heard about SEL, but now it's really being pushed by our Department of Education and the School Safety Technical Assistance Center. And so school board members need to say, no, we will not have that in our school district. So I'm hoping that this kind of thing will happen. Were there other thoughts that you had about this bullying bill that I haven't covered, Michelle?
One area is the behavioral interventions. You'll remember we did our best to try to alert people to the fact that in the language of the bullying bill, they stated that if your child was bullied, was accused of bullying, or was a bystander in bullying, that the school was, responsible to take action regarding that, but they did not have a responsibility to notify you that they were. And we fought hard to get parental notification in that language, and it's just appalling that the legislators who were pushing that legislation would not put in a clause saying that if a child was bullied, was accused of bullying, or was a bystander to a bullying incident, that the parents were to be notified. And so when you talk about behavioral interventions by the school, so now the school is going to intervene in the behavior of a child, and you look at that under the context of what SEL is, what social emotional learning is, changing the values and attitudes and beliefs of children, of students, you begin to see the picture of just how much parents are being removed from the upbringing of their children. You had said in one of your slides, the shaping the values and beliefs of your children is and monitoring their emotions is first and primarily the responsibility and the right of their parents. And this is why we bring this up, folks, is because we are increasingly seeing that in the school system, parents are being shoved aside, and the state is being given the priority, the responsibility, and the primary position in shaping the attitudes, values, and beliefs of children. This is pretty serious stuff.
I have a question too, Michelle.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Julie.
If I could. So Barb, you have really pierced through the fog of all the words and the propaganda. There's just a whole web of that they put out there. Obviously, none of what you're saying is what they say. So you've had to really study what this is, and then you look at what they say, but then you draw the conclusions and you bring it together. So there's an understanding of what this is. So could you give us a little bit of sense of how is it that they are selling this to the public as a good thing? I mean, because if they put it out there the way you did, people wouldn't think it was such a great idea. So how is it that they are promoting this to the public and to the whole, you know, the teachers and the school board members, that this is a really good idea?
Well, I think what they are doing is dressing it up as this wonderful program that, just think, if your children have positive emotional, social skills, this is going to help them with their academics. But what the parents aren't realizing is they're shortchanging the kids on academics, because they're filling the school day with all of these therapeutic measures that they're using. But they're selling it as a way to improve the academics, and that they will be better citizens, better able to get along with other people by having these great social emotional skills. But that's not what schools were intended to be. You know, we need our schools to be academic institutions. I mean, you look at our founding fathers and the amazing things that they wrote, and you think, oh, none of them went through social emotional learning. And so it's just this, it really is a joke. The whole thing is a charade, a sham that they're bringing about on the parents, trusting parents who have, you know, put their kids in the schools during the day and trust the teachers. And now they're coming in with this program that many teachers don't like either, and they're just trying to get around it and do the best that they can. But it really is something that everyone needs to speak up against and stop it before it takes over too many of our school districts.
Well, if people are going to be able to speak to their school board members or their teachers, to their legislators, or
yes, they need to go directly to the school board, to our legislators. Absolutely,
they need to know how it's being perceived by the people they're speaking to, and if these people are hearing really a different story than what we're going to be telling them. So I suppose one of the ways that they could use this this presentation as a learning tool for people they know to listen to your explanation of what it is, because they're not going to get this unless somebody tells them from outside, and it's hard to pierce through that. So I think it's important for people to know how they're making it sound like we're going to allow your children to learn by dealing with them on their social and emotional level, and
right.
Then they will be successful. So this is all about being successful. And then maybe one of the things you might want to tie this into, if you can, is the whole idea that the schools are wanting to do everything now that families and culture and churches do. They want to, you know, have these community schools where they serve them their food, they give them their medical care, they give them their dental care, they give them their health care. They do all of this for them, and now this therapeutics. So basically, they're making the schools the center of a replacement system.
Well, that's exactly what they're doing. Yes.
Don't you think?
Oh, I really think so, because then they can, again, once they take them away from the influence of the parent, they can fill their child's mind with the government-approved attitudes and beliefs. And this is undermining the rights of the parents, who are the primary educators of their children. And yet they often, like you were talking about, Michelle, with the bullying issues, are the last to be notified. You know, the schools will take over and deal with that issue. And it used to be, if your child acted up in school, you called that parent immediately and took care of the situation. But we see that the schools and these kinds of programs are separating the parents from the children more and more. And this is very dangerous. And this causes conflict in the minds of these young kids, that they don't know who to listen to.
Wouldn't you agree that the days are long gone when the values and beliefs of most parents in the United States were shared by the people who were writing curriculum and establishing the schools? And I believe that, you know, at the school level, you still have many teachers who share the values and the beliefs of most patriotic Americans, but that is not what is behind the writing of curriculum and the establishment of much school policy. And so we don't have the luxury anymore of being able to send our kids to school and trust that our values and beliefs are being honored and being taught in that school. So while it may be good that a school is teaching children socially and emotionally how to be successful, the fact is we don't live in an environment anymore where the same values and beliefs are shared by all. And so if they're not teaching children your values and beliefs, whose values and beliefs are they teaching them? And that's the burden that parents carry nowadays.
Unfortunately, we have abdicated our responsibility as, especially in the field of education. We've allowed the left to take over the education field, and this is what we are dealing with.
Sure, this is the aftermath of it.
So
And
if you
I
want-
want to, go ahead, Julie.
I was going to say, you know, a month ago, we did a webinar on transformational education. And, you know, that is kind of the philosophical foundation of the core curriculum now of the schools. So what that webinar addressed is, where did this come from? You know, how did this philosophy, you know, develop that transforming kids is the purpose of education? And so when I look at that and then I hear your presentation, I think that SEL is a key strategy to do exactly what the whole effort was. It sets out from the beginning as transformational education. So I would recommend that if people get a chance to go back and look at that as a foundation of what it is that they have plans to do. And this is a real major, or maybe the primary way of implementing it.
Well said, Julie. The transformational education video is on the YouTube channel, on the Child Protection League Action YouTube channel. And there's also a video on social emotional learning, a presentation that Dr. Karen Ephraim did for us not too long ago. And that is another resource for you folks to get more information on social emotional learning so that you can advocate for your children, grandchildren, and for the children in your community. We at the Child Protection League, work to protect children from indoctrination, exploitation, and violence. We are here to try to help you parents, you grandparents, people in the community to get the information that you need to be vigilant about what's going on in your circle, in your schools, and in this state, and of course across the country. We're here to help you to do that, and we do that because we know how hard it is to raise a family and to work and to try to make ends meet and get to all the things that your demanding life asks of you. And it takes people like us at the Child Protection League and other great organizations that are willing to sort of dig in and get the info for you and present it to you and get it to you so that you can stay informed. And so we hope that you appreciate the work that we do here, because we're doing it to protect our children and to help you protect your children. Barb and Julie, do you have any final thoughts before we sign off?
I would just say that parents need to get involved. You need to find out what your children are learning and get to know the teacher and the values of the teacher, because what the teacher believes is what will be taught to the child. But you can no longer just let the child go to school and not pay any attention to what they are reading, because some of the literature in the schools has gotten so bad, so pornographic, and that's probably another topic to be discussed. But parents need to stop trusting and start acting and taking a strong stand for what is right, and protect your children.
Well said. Well, before we sign off for tonight, I want to thank you, Barb, for all the work that you do for the Child Protection League and for children in general. And folks, what's going on in your world? What's happening in your schools? If you observe something, if you're seeing policies being implemented, examples of SEL, examples of violations of children's privacy, let us know. Contact us via our website, childprotectionleague.com, and let us know. We're here to help, and it wouldn't be the first time we've exposed, some shenanigans going on. But we're here for you, and we're here to help each other to protect kids. So with that, have a great night, and we'll see you next time.